Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-affleck.
And it's time for...
Hey, paradise, and we're putting up the parking fees. Doot, doot. UnSpun.
Just want to dive right into it and make me crazy. Watch my head spin around on my... Oh my goodness. Okay, so residential permit parking initiative. George, how is this going to change the remarkable urgency of climate? How is charging me more to park in front of my house going to change the climate? Because I'm still going to park. I'm still going to live here. My car's still going to be there.
Well, it depends on how the city decides they want to use the money, I suppose. I mean, it comes down to the question of it discourages people having cars. That's one thing. It incentivizes people to buy fuel-efficient cars or small cars or electric cars or all that stuff. It discourages people buying super hot rods or gas guzzlers. And so if you have those basic concepts, if you have a car that's a gas guzzler and it's newer than 2020, this is in Vancouver. I should probably clarify. This is Vancouver has announced that they're going to have, there's a process to creating a new parking fee in the city, across the city, starting at $45.
I'm so mad that I didn't even set up the story. I'm so mad about it. I didn't even set up. I'm sorry. Okay, let's dial back. Okay, we're in the last phase of public consultation on this green city initiative that it's shapeourcity.ca, right? /parking is where you go to take the survey. Have you taken the survey?
No.
It is another one of the surveys.
Conflict of interest for us, isn't it?
You're not allowed to take the survey. I'm a Vancouver taxpayer.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You know, we're supposed to be
go? I'll fight you right now, George. I'm in a fighting mood. No. So I looked at the survey, and yet again, it's very difficult to say, no, I don't like this. Because if you say no, you're for gas guzzlers. You're for muscle cars for everybody. Everybody gets a muscle car. I hate the environment. I don't care about my children. I don't care about their children. That is just simply not true. I'm looking at this going, I have a plug-in Prius.
Yeah, so you won't pay.
Nowhere to plug it in, George.
I know, but so this comes back. So for Vancouver, this is, here's something we haven't said in a while. 43 communication staff. Clink, that's quite a drink. That's a big bowl of flowers. By the way, my condolences, your dad.
Thank you.
Lots of flowers in your
I do have a lot of flowers. People are very
those
kind.
Those who are listening. Yes, obviously tough week for you, and I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
The 43 communication staff, and the one thing I'm noticing with this thing is, oh, for God's sakes, how could this bill be so badly communicated? First of all, it's a consultation process. Second of all, there are lots of ways it could potentially change. Third of all, it's not, I don't think, as bad as people think yet, because if everybody's focusing on this $1,000 fee that they're going to pay, and how dare you.
If you have the gas guzzler, let's just break this down.
Yeah.
If you have a gas guzzler, you will have to pay $1,000 a year in order to have that vehicle parked on the street. It'll ding you. If you got the F-150, that's newer than 2023. So after next year, if you make the choice to have the big diesel or gas truck that you need for your work or your fleet of workers or whatever, you're going to have to pay an extra $1,000. Now for you and I, when we're parking on our street, because we don't have a driveway, we don't have a garage, so we're not rich people. So we're going to have to pay $45 a year. It's around $45. So that means it could be $300 next year. It could be a $700 a year after that. That's the thing that bugs me. But the real getter for me is if I have somebody come in who doesn't live in Vancouver and comes to stay with me in my house and they want to park on the street, they have to pay for a daily or nightly, because it's 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., $3 for now, parking permit. And you know what? That just makes my head explode in just on so many levels. But what about the one that comes in not planning to stay the night, and we go walking distance for dinner, have a couple extra wobbly pops, and I say, hey, listen, you're not driving. And they're like, I'm fine. And I'm like, no, you're not. So now we have to log on somewhere and print off a permit from the city? No.
I don't know if it's going to be that complicated. It'll be on your phone and a license plate, so it'll be fairly simple.
I don't care. Make it stop.
I mean, I hate to be supporting this idea, but I kind of do, because I think it also alleviates. I mean, I just think it's being badly communicated, and there's a lot of process to go through it. And you're right. It's a slippery slope. It's a taxation, slippery slope. So here's what I would say. I would argue, yes, you're right. But I think that, if you look at the West End plan and parking plan, which I was supportive of, which people were mad about back then. But I said the model isn't working in the West End. I live downtown, so I have parking underground. But if my friends come to stay with me, they got to park in the street and they have to pay meters. There's no free parking downtown in Yaletown at all. And so they have to park until 10 o'clock. They got to pay. And then after 10 o'clock, it's free until the morning. If that's $3, that's not much. For a downtown resident, $3, okay. For a friend to stay over and park the car overnight, I don't have a problem with that.
Key there, George, is downtown resident. Because frankly, since the parking changed downtown into being like $9 to stop at the thing right there to do, it's ridiculously expensive. Yeah. It makes us stop going there, and it hurts businesses.
I can't park in your neighborhood. When I go to visit you,
you can park in my neighborhood.
It's really hard sometimes to find a spot, and because there's so much, and there's lots of residential parking lots.
This is me and my violin. There's lots of parking.
If you live in like the Peony area, you can never find a parking spot if you're a person visiting. Never. And those people who put their cones up in front of their houses and steal these spots,
that's a whole other conversation.
No, this is all part of the same thing. There needs to be
that has nothing to do with climate change, George.
There needs to be some control of the parking situation in our city. I agree. However, here's where this breaks down for me. Here's where I have a real problem, and this is what I've always fought for. If you're going to bring in new fees, there has to be a counter in the taxation somewhere else. You have to say, we're going to charge another 20. This is not a cash grab. And of course, I worry about scope creep, or not scope creep, of slippery slope, kind of $5, $10, $20, $30, $5 million, but that's, okay, that's a problem for sure. But if this council is smart, and Vision never did this, and I always said, this is not fair. You're double dipping here. When they would do the water charges, for example, they could pay a water fee. We didn't used to pay that. And I said, that's fine. I don't mind user pay. But I need to see a counter on the taxation side. If we're going to take $10 million additional funds by charging people to drink their water, I want to see a $10 million reduction in taxation, or I want to see specifically where that $10 million is going. If we're raising $10 million for this, or for, let's say, for example, this parking, and we're going to raise I've heard about $20 million potentially additional funds. That's 3% taxation. That's 3% taxes for a resident. If that's okay, so then reduce taxes by 3% if it's $20 million. Or tell me where you're going to spend that $20 million. Be very specific.
That matters to me?
You give me the line items of where you're going to spend that money.
100%.
This does not go. If it's going into general revenue, I want to see a line item on the other side saying reduction in property tax by $20 million. A, B, one in, one out. I want to see it, and then I believe, from a communications point of view, people will be way more comfortable with that. And it's embedded in policy, and they have to stick to it. And whatever government decides to reverse that, they take the heat. But at this point, if you want to change the way we bring in the money, you have to reward residents for making those changes. So if you're going to take money for parking that we didn't take before, then guess what, residents? I'm taking 1% off your taxes this year.
Because I'm already paying for my parking. I'm already paying for my parking as a Vancouver homeowner.
Yes, you pay for streets.
I pay for my streets, and people are like, well, we got to fix the sidewalks. I pay for that. That's in there too. I also pay for the schools, whether I use them or not. I pay for the sewage. And it goes back to what we've said so many times, George. I want this municipal government to get right what we need most first. And then you can start topping up and adding this, like we're going to lose our green city,
I know, but
we're not the greenest city.
Has put
carbon emissions have gone up exponentially over the last 4 years, period. It's gone up. Guess what? And I don't have the ability to hop on, hop off the transit that keeps getting promised that I can use so I don't need a car anymore. Because until that transit's ready, get your hand out of my pocket over my car. Like, this is just, it's garbage. It's a bullshit cup of coffee is what it is. And yes, I got our exploitive whatever, but it is. It is a bullshit cup of coffee.
Unless they can justify it through rewarding taxpayers as opposed to taking it from taxpayers. And that's what this council 100% will not do. And so they're just creating, and now you're seeing this polarization. It's like the bike lanes. You go, oh my God, we're 1 year away from election. We're seeing the polarization. John Cooper, saying, this is outrageous. But you have to look at it. It's unfortunate because this council's so polarized, and it's probably going to pass. But it actually meets the criteria. The actual way that you talked to Paul Storer about this, he's the head of transportation engineering at the City of Vancouver. Yeah. You talk to him, you ask him questions about where, information. But at the end of the day, he's actually following the orders by the majority on this council, which was climate emergency. And every department at the City of Vancouver has been tasked because of this council, no matter what the cost, to go out and find stuff to reduce GHGs, greenhouse gas emissions in our city. So Paul Storer said, okay, how can I do that? Parking. I could get people to, change the way they behave or whatever. So that's being it's not his imaginary idea that he's
Right.
to
I
do
wasn't
this.
mad at Paul.
This
And
came
Paul,
but this came
right.
from council. This council made this decision.
Yeah.
Maybe not everybody supported it, but as it is, it's now policy that staff have to follow. And this council should be saying, well, it's policy. We have to kind of support it, because even though we didn't agree with the policy, it's the same thing as for example, the Rental 100 program. I never liked the idea, the concept. I never agreed with the whole Rental 100 program because I felt it was too giving to developers. It wasn't going to solve the problem, but it passed. And it became policy. And so then I could not argue when a development came to me and it had Rental 100 built into it and vote against it because of that, because it's policy. I have to say it meets the criteria of the policies that are set that we created. Now, can I find other problems with this development that I don't like and vote against it if I decide to?
So I want to go all the way back to the parking.
So parking,
I want to go back to the parking.
He's trying to create policy that be directed by this council, and the people who are in that council who are saying, this is outrageous. It's your policy. Change the policy if you want to change that. Get rid of the climate emergency policy, and then you problem solved. Paul Storer, from the head of engineering for transportation, will go, okay, good, moving on.
I'm going to give Paul Storer some props here, because not only did he agree to the interview, he also agreed to take calls, which I thought was excellent. The problem I had with the interview is he spent a great deal of time ragging the puck. He was just going to talk for as long as he could and not really have
well, he's an engineer.
Right. But I mean, at least can we not get to a place with all of what you just explained of how policy works and how when something's put forward and how staff goes about it and how like all of that is what I find so incredibly frustrating, which will keep me out of politics, by the way, which is great for everybody. It's great for everybody, because I will just go crazy in that. So we're not going to actually find something that works, that doesn't knock back an already overtaxed, maxed out affordability crisis. Because frankly, George, my property tax are based on the assessed value of my home. I'm not selling my home. I want to live here.
Don't get me started.
Right?
I'm going to give a shout out to Brad West, who sends out tweets and then DMs me to remind me about his tweet that he's reduced taxes.
I know.
I mean, it's a smaller town, but he's a mayor of Poco, and it's like, oh, you're driving me crazy because of
you're killing me here, Brad. You're killing me, Westy.
You're killing me.
Yeah.
But
I get frustrated. I get frustrated. I like the middle that you found, though, if I may. I like the middle that you found, in that if they're going to say we need to do this in order to incentivize or whatever people to be mindful about what they're driving and
reduce their driving or whatever.
Right.
Get new cars,
but
whatever.
Great, because I have my plug-in, like from my perspective, but I feel like I'm being double dipped or triple dipped, really.
You will,
because I also have to still
as is, you will be. If there's no connection between discounting on the taxation side and whether it be property tax or whatever, then
because they can just park where they were just parking in front of their homes because it was more convenient. Now they can pull into their driveway or their garage. Yeah. But the hospital worker who works from 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. or 7 to 7 or whatever just got paid less a day in coming in from outside of the city and having to park on the city street. And now it's going to cost $3 a day. $3 a day is $1,000 a year, man.
But you know that I've talked about this before. The data for cars driving into our city, the number of cars has stayed stagnant for 20 years now. So there's no increase of cars coming into our city because of mostly train stations, and mostly because of Canada Line and SkyTrain. And some bus
but it
networks.
Stops
basically, running. So what are we trying to achieve here? If we can go into the bigger picture of, is this really going to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions to the level that we need to? When I think about greenhouse gas emissions, the biggest challenge is the old buildings that have roofs that are not properly insulated. If the city were to create a program to help companies insulate their ceilings, the roofs of their buildings, you would see greenhouse gas emissions go down. It would be expensive, but it would be a program that would immediately reduce GHGs in the city far beyond reducing car traffic, which is already happening.
Let's start there. I would feel so much better about politics. George, sorry, I keep cutting you off, but I would feel so much better about municipal politics in Vancouver if I could see even one step taken, one really meaningful step taken that is more about corporate alignment with climate change than it is the taxpayer's pocket. Like I just... fix what's broken in the city, collect the garbage, make the sewage work, make the water work, give me the nuts and bolts of living in the city and clean the city, empty the garbage cans on the city streets, clean them up, mow the lawns in the park.
Okay, here we go. Wait,
I'll get there later. Let's talk provincial.
Money, yes, provincial. Okay, sure. And it's all about money there too, right? I mean, come on. I mean, the Premier's office, there's Vaughn Palmer's column today, which I'm like, oh my God, this is just like Vancouver. So he's uncovered that the Premier's office has increased its budget by 63% from 11 million to 14 million since they got elected. And for a whole bunch of things, mostly staff. And it's so reminiscent of Vancouver and the mayor and with
Gregor Robertson, vision. Are you looking for the word vision?
Vision. And Jeff Meggs, who was there, he was staff at that time. He was chief of staff back with pre-vision, and then he became a city councillor. But and I would always bring this up and say, why has your budget gone up by so much in the mayor? What are you doing in there? Because I was never actually invited to the mayor's office. I never saw the real office. And Gregor Robertson never let me in there.
Really?
It's because I would know too much, perhaps. No, I never invited into we had private meetings in the other fake office, but there was a real office that I was never permitted into. I suppose I could have just walked in there. Anyways, that budget went crazy from like a few $100,000 with Sam Sullivan to a few million with 1.7 million, I think it is, with Gregor. So and of course that people complain, but it actually didn't. It wasn't a game changer. It didn't make people not vote for Gregor Robertson. And I think the Premier and with Jeff Meggs, they're seeing the same thing. Let's build this fortress in the Premier's office, just like they did with the mayor's office in Vancouver, like Jeff did in Vancouver.
Oh, no.
And they're build a fortress and drive the agenda out of the Premier's office, that sort of CEO kind of approach, not through caucusing or any of that. We're running this province like sort of an American style management of a government, right? The governor and how controlled that is. The Premier and in the case of Vancouver, where all the decisions, like you see the mayor of Vancouver, he writes stuff on letterhead now without any approval from council, and he gets threatened for lawsuits by NPA, whatever. That kind of they're still going through with it. But it's a good question. What is the power that this office is allowed in Vancouver or the Premier? It's not supposed to be this autonomous department that can do whatever it wants. This is a democracy built on
and a parliamentary legislative democracy, which is important
democracy, where you have
note.
Input from everybody, and the whole province is supposed to have a say in whether you're left, right, or center, whatever your politics, you're supposed to have a say. But that's not what's happening in Victoria, and it's not what happened in Vancouver. This centralization of power, of money, of administration, of decision making, you're seeing it happen in Victoria, and it won't go backwards. Whoever wins in the future, whether it be the BC Liberals or whoever, will continue that now. It's embedded now in Vancouver, and it will be embedded in Victoria, and it's unfortunate because it eats away at democracy.
I heard Sonia Furstenau, the Green Party leader in BC, making comment about how we are seeing a shift now as we're coming out of this pandemic to more acrimonious politics, as opposed to the collaborative piece that we've seen over the last 15 months, because we all had to come together as humans to say, how are we going to best navigate our province through this emergency? And now that the emergency is waning, that we're moving into management phase of this, that she's seeing that aggressive political sort of divisiveness, coming back into play, and how I'm looking forward to speaking with her. Actually, I'm going to try and book her on because I'm filling in on the afternoon show at CKNW, and I both are. We're working triple jobs, but it's gives us an opportunity to talk this through, because I think she's right. Like, I want my leaders. Anymore.
They have a massive majority. Nothing matters to the opposition. Who cares?
But I guess you're right. Launch. You are right in the political sense. You know way more about the interworkings of politics at all levels, frankly, than I do, which is why we hang out together and I get to bend your ear. But as a voter, my vote counts and my voice counts. And when you start having engagement, like I believe people are going to be far more engaged in municipal and provincial and federal politics in this country than they have ever been before, because this pandemic has given us this new sense of awareness. And to just have people bickering across aisles and nothing getting done, and there being like a fortress around whoever's in the Premier's office just doing what, and I'm not suggesting that John Horgan is doing this, but just what you were laying out there, the sort of the slow walk toward this creation of it being more corporate than it is traditionally Canadian politics is something that I think we'll be looking out for. I don't like what's happening at City Hall in Vancouver. I don't like it. I don't know if one person would change it, because you've said that to me. You run for mayor, you think, oh, I'm going to make it all better, and then you get in there and realize there's a lot of red tape in here, and I'm not in charge.
That, and if you can't, and what Kennedy-Stewart has, the difference with Gregor, he had his team and the majority on council that would just do whatever,
pushed it all through,
and they pushed it all through. Kennedy hasn't got that, but he still has the budget. The mayor's office, it was reduced a little bit, I think, but he can still do a lot of damage as our mayor when he really shouldn't have that kind of authority in what is called a weak mayor system. He's one vote of 11. And the same is the case provincially. The premier is one vote of 183, right? It's not, you don't have more power as a premier on the floor or as the mayor of Vancouver. That is the beauty of democracy. Every one vote, one person, and you represent your people. And if they don't like what you're doing, you get the boot. And, as you so desire the park board to give the boot. And
I've got a little, I'm just saying, October 15th, 2022, baby. Yeah. Okay. So just before we get to that, the school thing, because that's a big one. I just want to reiterate that obviously you're tuned into UnSpun podcast. I love following along at UnSpun podcast on your Twitter. You got your at George _affleck. I am at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y Vance, on Twitter as well. We're very busy on there and active. And if your day is so busy, but you're not really sure what to keep up on, you definitely need to sign up for the Fin, the Orca.ca. You click, you put your email in every weekday, you get the list. And Vaughn Palmer's column that you just referenced is the big splash today. And that's why I was up to speed on that, is because within the Fin that McLean Kay, our editor-in-chief, puts together, you get everything sort of curated for you and what you need to know each and every weekday. So go to the Orca, sign up for the Fin. It's direct to your email inbox. It's awesome. You know what else is awesome? The announcement today about schools. In the fall, it appears that schools will be as close to normal as possible, because we are on track to have all kids 12 and over double vaccine by September. All of us. Oh my God, it gives me goosebumps every time I say it out loud, George. Back to school, baby.
I got my double shot was the last week. I think it was on Saturday before last. I think it was in between now and the last show. And that shot was supposed to happen in August. So it's June, right? So I'm a month and a half ahead of schedule.
Hold on a second.
And all my friends.
Siri just decided to talk to me through my headphones.
I get that sometimes. I get that. So yeah, it's, we're ahead of schedule on that. All my friends are done. My kids have all their first shots. We're on the way to full vaccination. And of course, the data shows that we're kicking butt here in BC. And that's great. But yes, the school's getting back to normal. Obviously, my youngest is going into grade 8. So that'll be good, because the kids under grade 12, they don't have vaccination. So I'm not sure. I didn't catch on whether masks will still be required in the fall for elementary, but certainly for high schools with their vaccination, they should be fine, right?
Yeah, they should be fine. And back to having clubs and no cohorts. That's the big one for me, is that full day classes, no cohorts, mixing with others, because my son was in grade 8 this year. I mean, if you're going to have an awkward year, let it be grade 8, right? And he's done very well, touch wood. I'm very thankful that my ship in this storm sailed pretty straight. I think it's absolutely incredible that Dr. Henry did. And roll your eyes if you like, but I'm going to keep saying how much I respect and appreciate her, because she made it her mission to keep schools open. And there was a lot of pushback, and that woman has had death threats from teachers. The unions have been pushing back hard the entire time. Terry Mooring and I have many conversations. I have great respect for her, a very difficult position to be in, because not every district is created equally. And my district, or our district, had good ventilation, had a newer school, had the ability to do things in a way that it wasn't, we don't live in Surrey, and Surrey was a hotspot, and there were a lot more notifications going home to stress out families in Surrey. So I get that. But you know what? It's going to get a lot better. And even the head of the teachers union in Surrey was speaking out about how much better it is. And,
I think the schooling thing, to me, that the fact that we pulled that off with the pressure that was on Dr. Bonnie Henry, for sure. You and I are parents. when you talk about essential services, we talk a lot about healthcare workers, but as a parent, school is pretty essential for our kids in more ways than just education, socialization, all those things, right? And I
Mental
think
health.
that what will be interesting will be to see places that basically almost everywhere else in certainly North America closed their schools. We are one of the few jurisdictions in North America, and if not the world, that kept our schools pretty much open, except for a couple of months last spring, and how that will impact the long term. What will our students look like? I mean, the announcement, what kind of progress will they make beyond, what challenge won't they have statistically? We might see some terrible things that in places where they kept these kids out. We won't know for several years on the impact of this. But one of the things that I still think there was an opportunity, what I think we've learned a lot about education is that we need, the funding announcement was, I don't know, 20, I forget that. It was in
27 million?
27 million.
Whatever, but
mostly
open
to
the
deal
wallet.
with the COVID stuff, right?
They should be doing this. How much do you need?
Now's the time. People are open to it.
This is it. And George, when you're talking about, because it's what you said about all the things, socialization, mental health, all of that, I totally get it. You want to see what happens when the education is depleted? Look around. Misinformation and disinformation.
The welfare system as well.
100%.
We need to look at
we had a problem with that
from now.
Yeah. But we had a problem with this pre-pandemic. You and I were sitting here talking about teachers striking because they didn't have enough paper. Come on. The time has come.
I was on my PAC, chair of my PAC for a long time before I got into politics. And I couldn't believe all the things that we were required to do as parents that when I was a kid. That wasn't a thing. It wasn't even. It didn't come across, as something you did, and now it is.
Yeah.
So it's.
My dad was a teacher for 32 years in Vancouver. He was a teacher at Britannia, and he would go to the school at 6:00 in the morning to open up the men's changing room so that some of his students could at least have a shower, and he'd make sure they had a hot meal. That's just one teacher who was doing that. We should have processes and programs in place, which we do, when schools are open. Another reason why Dr. Henry made sure that the schools stayed open, because kids needed food. Kids needed a safe place to go. I can't tell you how many times I've had people come up to me and say, your dad saved my life because I was going down a bad path, or I was living in a bad home environment, or I was considering taking measures that were awful. And he made sure that I was on the right path. And you can't identify those problems if kids aren't in school. And that the importance of education is really, really obvious. So there's one for Bill Vance.
You read your column this week was lovely, by the way. It was a tribute to kind of him, but also to the people that helped him. So I recommend you want to talk a bit about it. I don't want to.
I will. I can pull it together just enough to talk about it. My brother and I were struggling as to how to let everybody know about Dad, because obviously, as I just mentioned, he was a bit of a legend. He was a piece of work. I'm a chip off his piece of work block. So you either love him or you didn't, but a lot of people loved him. And so we kept it off social media. He passed away on Friday. We kept it off social media and just told our friends and our close family, I sent you a note and said, and then we're like, well, what do we do for the caregivers? Because he was in long-term care. I've talked about it tons. What do we do for them? We don't bring them. I mean, here. No, here's a pizza. No, here's some donuts. No, here's a bottle of scotch. No, nothing felt right. And I said, you know what? And my brother's private dude and cool and whatever, but he's private. And he's like, sometimes can be a little crusty about my social media. But he loves my columns. And I said, what if we wrote a letter to the staff at Delta View and then sent it up the food chain, sent it all the way to the top of the parent company of the long-term care home that's actually in Alberta, so that they knew how important these people were to the act of dying and the end of life plan and all the things that I didn't know about until a week ago. I mean, I thought I did, but I didn't. And they were amazing. And so then he said, what about your column? Why don't we write an open letter in your column? And so I was like, okay. So I sat down and I did it, and it's as visceral. I just read it.
Yeah. One of the things I thought was interesting was, and this is what, when you've gone through this process with your parent, certainly with me, I've gone through with my parent, my mom and my grandma, and my dad was very sudden, so didn't go through that. But certainly with my mom, all the people that are in, especially in palliative, I found that there's so many people like you, and you're kind of in a bit of a like trance, like you're like zombie kind of going in there,
floating.
you know what's happening, and you're torn because you think, okay, it's the end, but it's also you don't want it to be the end, but you're also thinking I need it to be the end. And all these people are kind of coming in and out, and they're doing their thing, and you kind of get to know them because you spend a lot of time in the lunchroom. And if your parent is still, your dad had challenges with Alzheimer's, my mom had cancer, so she was still lucid, and so she could do, we could have conversations and all that stuff. And so you get to know all these people. And my mom was a very social person. Like she was like, "Oh, have you met it?" And she'd have all nicknames for people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you know, and then it's over, and you're gone, and they're gone, and you don't go back. Once it's over, you're just gone. And so your column literally named all the people, and I thought that was very touching, because I think a lot of people get unheralded because there're just so many of them, and you forget them, and you leave there, and it's over, and you're dealing with the grief and the process and all that stuff. So thank you. I think for my point of view, those names represent names for I think a lot of us who have gone through that process. So
I'm glad that resonated with you, because that is exactly what I wanted there. So read the column.
All right. On that note, we'll see you later.